Okay, you all set?
I sure hope so.
Okay, so Bob is a lifelong computer expert. And matter of fact, I remember Bob from when I was at Digital in the 70s, and he was a vice president and I was a nobody. And but we're very, very lucky that he is our main volunteer, and for all of our seniors who end up with problems that they can't get themselves out of, then he comes with his white horse and solves the problems. So with no further ado, he's going to help us figure out Windows 10.
Thank you, Angela. I apologize for being late. I was, in fact, helping a senior this morning who had a sudden and emergency, and it sort of threw off my preparation, in particular putting the right presentation on the right laptop. So what I'm going to do today is give you a brief introduction to Windows 10, but mostly I'm going to go through the process of making it work for you. I'll switch laptops to a brand new Windows 10 laptop that has not been touched, and by the time we're finished, it'll be something that you can tolerate using, which I promise. But first of all, let's briefly go through Windows 10 and sort of what happened. Any of you get this recently? Duh. Any of you still on Windows 7? See me after class. Today is the true deadline. Today is the day that Microsoft brings out security patches for 8 and 10, but not for 7. And that will tell the villains of this world exactly where the bugs are. So from now on, Windows 7 is not only wide open, it's got a big target painted on it saying, shoot here. So welcome to Windows 10, because Microsoft really, really, really wants everybody on 7 and even 8 to migrate. And there are incentives. The upgrade is free. And Windows 10 is, quote, the last version of Windows, except it's going to change every 6 to 12 months. And the Start menu is back, sort of. But to quote Robert Heinlein, Ton Stoffel, there ain't no such thing as a free lunch. There's a hidden cost to all these incentives. So why did Microsoft make this change to free upgrades? Well, one of the reasons is Apple did it 6 years ago. And these days, most software gets frequent small upgrades, not some sort of monster big bang upgrade every 3 to 4 years. They also have major security issues with Windows 7. The old code is buggy, it's hard to maintain. And because the security updates were optional, what's actually out there as Windows 7 varies all over the place. In fact, 20% of all Windows 7 configurations never, ever got a security update in their lifetime. We have a name for those systems. We call them victims. And then they're trying to avoid cost because maintaining 3 different operating systems is pretty expensive. But they need money because Windows 10 is still an expensive thing to develop. So they're making up for lost revenue by doing at least 3 things that really annoy you. First, they're bundling applications for a fee. The fee is paid to them, not by you. And they're also upselling applications through their Windows Store. So if you're wondering why your Windows 10 came with Farm Heroes Saga or Candy Crush, it's because the vendors who make those programs are paying Microsoft to include them in Windows 10, in the hopes that you will then start buying things that go with the games. Secondly, they're making money by displaying advertisements through their own built-in applications. And lastly, and most insidiously, they're collecting and using the data on your usage patterns. In short, the revenue for Windows comes from the new holy trinity of the industry. Bloatware, meaning software you don't really want, but's there anyway. Adware, ad that's going to throw ads at you that you don't really want. And spyware. So in this talk, I'm going to go through how to make Windows 10 more livable. In particular, how to get rid of the Microsoft built-in applications that you don't use, how to stop Windows 10 from displaying advertisements, how to stop Windows 10 from spying on you, and finally, if you really can't stand it, how to bring back the Windows 7 Start menu so you can have your familiar little button and the usual layout. There's a lot of steps, but they're all relatively simple. That's why I don't want you to panic over that handout. This is like sort of the Great British Baking Show. You know, you see this marvelous concoction and you say, oh my God, how can they do it? And then when they give the master class, they explain the steps. And you know, if you follow the steps in the recipe, it's actually pretty easy. But getting it right sort of starts at the very beginning. When they ask you, set up a Microsoft account, and they really, really, really want you to set up a Microsoft account because they make it extraordinarily hard not to. So my answer is, unless you are going to use Office, don't do it, because it allows them to track you better. If you are using Office, particularly any version of Office since 2013, you will need a Microsoft account, because that's the only way you can save the activation key in case you lose it. It's the only way. I found this out the hard way. For Windows 10 Professional, you can set up a local account by pretending that you're going to join a domain. You're not going to join the domain, but because that's a later thing, they'll let you set up a local account. For Windows 10 Home, which is what you mostly get if you have a consumer computer, you actually have to disconnect from your network to make Windows 10 let you set up a local account. This is Looney Tunes, but that's what they make you go through. And then you'll be offered a series of pages with things you can accept or decline. And the simple answer is decline everything. No, you do not want activity history. No, you do not want Cortana, the artificial intelligence assistance. And on this privacy page, you want to turn off every single setting except location services. And that's just so that, by the way, it will set the time zone correctly. So it starts at the very beginning, turning off the way Microsoft wants to track you. Now I'm going to tell you what my preferences are, so you'll know where I'm coming from. First of all, I don't want any bloatware on my system. I don't want anything that I did not consciously choose to have on my system, because this stuff slows the system down. If you get a consumer laptop, it often comes with lots of, quote, value added. Toshiba is terrible at this. There's like a list this long. Lenovo gives you a list this long. That stuff is all being loaded at startup, and it slows your system down. I don't want any Microsoft app, and I don't want one of their browsers. I prefer my code to come from open source applications where I can see what it's doing if I want to. And as for the Microsoft browsers, Internet Explorer is too dangerous to use. How dangerous is it? Microsoft advises you not to use it. They can't take it away because some businesses depend on it, but their advice is don't use it. And the new Edge browser is a complete failure and is going to be replaced by a new Edge browser, which will actually be based on Chrome. So my advice is very simple. Use Chrome or use Firefox and just stay away from the others. And don't use the AI assistant, Cortana. Even Microsoft admits it's a failure, and they're going to de-emphasize it. Now, you need some tools to do this work. And the tools that I'm going to be using in this demonstration include something called CCleaner, or as it's actually known before they decided that it wasn't quite the right image they wanted to convey, Crap Cleaner. 7-Zip, which is an archiving compression tool. If you're familiar with WinZip, this is a more modern and completely free version. Irfan View is a photo viewer and editor that's completely free and free of advertising. MPC Home Cinema, or VLC are both free and ad-free media players. Spybot Anti-Beacon is a program that will turn off a lot of Windows 10 spyware. And 3D Objects Menu Removal Registry Hack. I'll explain that later. And all of these can be downloaded from the web. I've actually collected them into a folder that I'm maintaining. And there's a link to it in your handout. It's on a sharing site called Mega. And you'll find everything you need there. OK, so now I have to switch laptops to the Windows 10 machine that is not set up properly. Excuse me, not set up the way I like it. Properly is in the eyes of the beholder.
Well, for people that already have Windows 10, because it's downloaded by itself, can they do most of this?
They can do all of it. You can even deal with the stuff you forgot to turn off at the beginning. All right, so this is what you get if you've got Windows 10 fresh out of the box. And let's take a quick tour of all the things that are wrong with it. Okay, first of all, you've got this horribly ugly background picture. I hope some of you have seen this before. If you've upgraded over Windows 7, it has your old background and everything's good. Secondly, it's got all these weird icons on the taskbar, like what the heck is that and what the heck is that? And then it's got Microsoft Edge. And third, it'll have all your old desktop icons, but it'll have some new ones like Microsoft Edge and so forth. And then when you come down here and say, what's that? You see the new Start menu. And it's filled with things that you really, really actually never want to see again in your life. Like Plays and Candy Crush and the Netflix app. And the only thing that's important for now is to note what these buttons are. The thing with the gear is settings. We're going to use that a lot. And that sort of replaces the control panel, except when it doesn't. There's another great thing about Windows 10 is they now have split the controls between settings and control panel, and you actually will need both. This is your power. You can shut the machine down, and you've got quick links to your pictures, your documents, and your account. Excuse me. So let's get started in trying to make this into something that is reasonable. I'm going to pull out my copy of the handout, and we're going to follow along. So the first thing that you're going to need to do is open the File Explorer. And already you'll see one of the many improvements that you really, really want to get rid of. All right? Which is this so-called Quick Access panel. The Quick Access panel is kind of like the old Windows 7 favorites that was in the Explorer, except it's on steroids. And it's got all these things, which, by the way, are immediately duplicated again right down here under your PC. So it makes the display very cluttered, and it makes it very, very annoying. And finally, if you actually want to see what's on your disk, you've got to go down further to local disk or OS or whatever it's called. And you create a directory, which you do with a button that appears that will allow you to create a new folder. That's handy. Create a folder called Kits, and you put my toolkit in there. And you can see that it has a lot of the tools that I mentioned ready to go. Plus some that are there for fun, like the old games. Then you want to install the freeware. Now, I've already done this because it can take time, and I didn't want to bother. But when you're finished, you'll have some additional desktop icons, which I'll simply restore because I deleted them before. So. Yeah. Okay, so we now have installed our icons, and we have a new browser. I use Firefox by preference. If you like Chrome, use Chrome. An email program, if you get your email through Outlook, that's fine. If you get it by going through a web browser, that's fine. I use Thunderbird. And because this machine has an optical or a DVD drive, a program for burning DVDs. One of the things that changed in Windows 10 is it no longer will play DVDs through the standard Microsoft software. Why? Because they save 10 cents in royalties that way. That's what they said. You also need Adobe Reader. And you can get that from the Adobe Reader site on the web. And just be sure to uncheck all the offers that it makes during installation. It will try and install McAfee antivirus. You don't want it, no matter what. So just uncheck all the offers as it goes through. So now let's start the actual cleanup. This area down here is called the taskbar. You're probably familiar with it. So first of all, let's get rid of some of these things that are cluttering it up. Like you right-click on it and show Cortana. I'm not going to use Cortana. Thank you very much. Show task view. I'm not going to use that either. And then for the programs down here that you're not going to ever use again, like Edge, you unpin it from the taskbar. The Microsoft Store, you unpin it. And Microsoft Mail, you unpin it. So you've done the first step in decluttering the taskbar. Now, let's go to our desktop. Get rid of this Edge shortcut they gave you, because you're never going to use Edge. Now, I like to move my recycle bin to the bottom. I'm old-fashioned. That's where it was in XP, and I liked it that way. And I also want to have a shortcut for the File Explorer. So there are lots of ways to do this. I'm just going to do it from the desktop by saying I want a new shortcut. I know where it is. It's in, C:. It's in Windows, if I could spell it. Thank you. And then I want EX, and it will find it. That's what I want. And I want it to be called File Explorer. And now I've sort of got my desktop icons the way I want them. As I said, if you upgraded from Windows 7, all your desktop icons will still be there. So let's try and now deal with the new File Explorer. What do we do? Well, there's a couple of things here that are sort of really bizarre. There's this whole quick access thing, which duplicates what's down here. There's OneDrive. And you're saying, what the heck is OneDrive? OneDrive is to Windows as iCloud is to your Apple device. If you've got an iPhone, you have some free storage out in the cloud where you can store your photographs. Except it's never enough. iCloud will give you 5 gigabytes for free and then pay them every month. Microsoft, it's the same. OneDrive is 5 gigabytes and then pay them every month for anything over. It's not enough, and personally, I don't trust people with my stuff. My stuff is either on a disk drive, on a backup disk drive, or it's in my safe deposit box. Thank you very much. You're going to hear a theme. I'm a Luddite. Yeah.
What happens when you go over your 5? They just throw it away?
No, they won't let you put anything in it until you start paying them money. Any of you use Dropbox? You know that Dropbox gives you 3 gigabytes for free, and then they want a monthly fee. And as you put the first thing over 3 gigabytes in, they say, nope, won't do it anymore. Yes?
And also, if you don't use it for a long time, send you an email that says, we notice you're not using your Dropbox account. We're going to close it in 30 days. If you don't see the email, you lose all your stuff.
Yeah. Yeah. One of the things, it used to be the case, we thought some tech companies like Facebook were evil and some were good. They're all evil. Let me tell you. All right, so let's clean up the File Explorer. And to do that, we're going to go into this under the File menu, and we're going to go to Options. Change folder and search options. The first thing we're going to do is say, don't open to quick access, open to this PC, which is the equivalent of computer, if you remember back to Windows XP. And they've changed it every time because that's what they do. Then under here, under privacy, uncheck everything and clear. And that will wipe out most of quick access. Then in the View tab, I personally want to see the hidden folders and I want to see the extensions. You'll need that later, so that's okay. Now we're going to wipe out everything in quick access by right-clicking on it and unpinning it. And watch them disappear. It's amazing. And now it's just an annoying one-line thing on your Explorer. I would like to get rid of it entirely, but the surgery to do that makes even me a little scared. I read about the procedure and it's like, I can't automate that. So now we're basically got the File Explorer where we want it. Let's go and do some tweaks under Settings. We're going to spend a lot of time cleaning up Settings. And I'll remind you that Settings is here on the Start menu, and it looks like a gearbox. That seems to be the latest thing for Settings or Options, is to do a gearbox. And there are a lot of them. There's 12 subheadings. It's like, oh my God, now what do I do? Well, we'll just do them one at a time. We'll start with System. And System gives you options like, for example, changing the scale factor. So if you can't see well and you want to have everything be bigger, you could set a scale factor of 125. Now this is a very small display. I'm not going to do that because then nothing would fit. Under Notifications and Actions, we have to do a few things. First of all, we have to edit our quick actions. Now you say, what the heck are quick actions? Well, if you come down here to this box in the lower right corner, which controls your notifications, then you'll notice that there are some things down here at the bottom that you could do, and there are more of them if you expand it. But the very first one, the one you are most likely to hit by mistake, is called tablet mode. If you hit tablet mode, voila, you have Windows 8. And you will wish you were dead. I had a senior turn this on by mistake. She thought her machine had had a heart attack. And I could not figure out how to get rid of it. So by editing my quick actions, let's turn that back off, please. If I edit my quick actions, I just grab tablet mode and I move it to the end where it's not going to be seen unless you do a couple of key clicks. So that's just safety. Then further down on this page, I do not want Windows showing me what's new and making suggestions. And I don't want tips, tricks, and suggestions as I use Windows. Please leave me alone. Thank you. Goodbye. Focus Assist, that's off by default. Power and sleep. For some reason, the default setting is to put your machine to sleep, even if it's plugged in 15 minutes. So come and set something reasonable, like 3 or 4 hours for when the PC will go to sleep, when it's plugged in. And short times are fine for battery usage. And finally, under shared experiences, if it's on, turn it off. It's another way of having your data leak to other machines, other people, and to Microsoft. Well, that's 1 out of 12 done. We're making progress. Let's go to Devices. This has Bluetooth. If you don't like Bluetooth, you can turn it off. Bluetooth is another local area wireless network. It's for your wireless headset or something like that, talking to your phone, talking to other people's phones, talking to other people's computers. Printers and scanners. Aside from whatever printer you've installed, Microsoft has given you 3 new ones. They've given you a printer that's a fax machine, a printer that's a PDF document creator, very useful. You want to create a PDF, you just print to this printer. It's really nice. And something called XPS, which was their attempt to compete with PDF before they threw in the towel. So we don't need that. Nobody ever needed it, but they still have it. And frankly, I am never sending a fax in my life. Goodbye. Mouse, touchpad, typing. The next one is autoplay. So what's autoplay? You may have noticed that when you plug a USB stick into your machine, a window comes up saying, what would you like to do? Would you like to do this? Would you like to run? Would you like to do that? A properly configured USB stick will run software automatically. That's really bad. So you want to turn autoplay off for security. If you do nothing else from this list, do that. 2 down. Phone, nothing to do there. 3 down. Network and internet. Well, by default, when you connect to a network, it's going to say that it's a public network because it's being conservative. That means you can't share files. You can't communicate between machines in your house. So if it's, in fact, you're connected to your home network, you need to change the connection properties and make it private. But otherwise, there's nothing else you have to do under networks. 4 down, personalization. Oh my God. All right, the first thing is, if this you get this picture by default if you get a new Windows 10 installation. It is hideously ugly. So they do have a couple that you can use instead. They're very pretty. Or you could set a solid color. Or you can use a picture of your own. I'm going to use this one, which is a lot nicer. Then the other thing is, again, if it's a new installation, they've got a contrast color scheme, which I find very hard to read, with these very light-colored icons against a very light-colored background. And that's because you have the light scheme. Well, if you do the dark scheme, it looks even worse. See what I mean? So what you really want is a custom scheme where your default Windows mode is dark and your default application mode is light, and then you get something you can tolerate. Lock screen. Here's a new feature. If any of you worked in business, you may remember that a lot of business computers made you type Control-Alt-Delete before you got to the login prompt. This is something that Bill Gates said was the biggest mistake he ever made. So they decided to do it again. Now, you don't get your login screen, you get the so-called lock screen, and you have to click on it to bring up the login prompt. If you have Windows 10 Pro, you can turn this off. If you have Windows 10 Home, you're stuck. Start menu. Well, show the app list, sure. If you want to see recently added apps, that's fine. I find that useless. I much prefer to have the most used apps because those are the ones I'm going to come back to again and again. And no, I don't want your suggestions. Thank you. No suggestions. The taskbar. Personally, I hate this little thing where you have to get more icons that way. So I am going to change, select which icons appear on the task in the notification area and say, I want them all. And you think, oh my God, I've lost my whole taskbar. We will get rid of these one by one and get it down to the essential set as we move forward. But so far, so good. All right. So now we are at apps. We're not going to do much here because we need to do much more drastic action using a tool than this will allow me. But at this point, I would like to get rid of, personally, it's up to you, I want OneDrive to go away. So I'm just going to uninstall it. This is not a barn burner of a machine, but I did put a solid state drive in it, so it should be reasonably fast. Did that work? Yeah, okay, it's gone. The icon disappeared from down here. Good. We'll come back to this later and do a lot more. Accounts. I don't do anything with accounts, but there's lots of things that you can do with Windows for sign-in. You can have Windows recognize your face. What a terrible idea. Because somebody could just hold a photograph up and say, I'm you, and it doesn't know. If you have a fingerprint reader, you can log in with your fingerprint. And you can have a PIN, meaning that instead of having to type a real password, you can type a 4-digit code. Somehow this makes you more secure.
No.
But they also let you sign in with a physical security key. This is called a FIDO key, F-I-D-O. And this is the only provably secure way of doing logins that I know of. It's a standard. You can buy the keys for $15 on Amazon. It's supported by Microsoft. It's supported by Gmail. And all the big companies, Amazon, Bank of America, Fidelity, are part of the consortium, but they haven't implemented it yet. I really, really hope they will get to it, because the way this works is you plug it in, there's a button you press, and it has a secret that only it knows. That means you can't be phished. Somebody could get your login and your password, and if they don't physically get this, they can't pretend they're you. So I'm hoping that will work. In the meantime, I just use a good password, or on this machine, I have no password, because after all, it's a loaner. So, yeah, so accounts, time and language, there should be nothing to do there. It should have figured out which time zone you're in, but it didn't. So it thinks I'm in Pacific time. I've got to go and change it to Eastern time. That's because I'm not on the internet. Gaming. Microsoft wants to sell you Xbox. And so they've done a lot of integration with Xbox. Unless you are going to be a physical gamer with your machine, you don't want any of this stuff. You don't want to record game clips. You don't want to open the game bar using the controller. You don't want to have game mode. Now, this machine is too slow to do captures and broadcasting. But basically, go into these first 4 and turn off anything that's enabled. That's my answer. Hey, we're making great progress. That we're down to ease of access.
The good news is also Mark Pauly's here for Minuteman Media Network, so he will send us a link which will send out news you can use. And when you actually go to do this, if you have another computer, you can watch it as you do it.
Right.
So
Well, you can actually watch it as you do it anyway, because
it will be on YouTube as well as on Channel 8.
Yep. So let's introduce you to yet another annoyance of Windows 10, scroll bars. Where are the scroll bars? The answer is you have to get right over them and they appear. Isn't that wonderful? No. In the ease of access menu, automatically hide scroll bars in Windows? No. And your scroll bars come back. This is a feature they stole from Apple. Got to turn it off in Mac OS too. So, terrible idea, lovingly copied. So we've now done 10 of 14. I guess there are 14. Nothing under search. If you didn't enable Cortana when the machine was being installed, there's nothing to do under Cortana. If you did install it, you'll have to go into Cortana and turn off all the permissions. Like, I don't intend to use Cortana even when my device is locked. I never want to speak to it. Or listen to it. We'll come back to privacy. And the last one we'll do right now is update and security. Now, I have installed the updates, most of them, because I didn't want to connect to the library internet and use up their bandwidth. But before you do anything, there's a couple of things you should think about. The way Windows 10 works is you have no choice about updates. They're going to install them on the second Tuesday of the month, and more often if there's an emergency. And they're going to reboot your machine whether you like it or not. Some of you may remember the very first presentation that Chief Fisher made on the communications tower when the whole Heald Road, Acton Street complex was there with pitchforks and knives in anger. And he was in his presentation, 8 o'clock rolled around, Windows 10 rebooted his machine out from under him, and it took 15 minutes to get it back. When he did this later at town meeting, he used a Mac. But you can actually control this with the setting change active hours. By default, you're protected only between 8 and 5. But you can actually set a window as long as 16 hours. So for example, I will typically change the start time to 7. That's when I'm up. And I'll typically change the end time to 11 at night. And now I have a window of 16 hours when it will not reboot. So it'll reboot when I'm asleep. But be sure to save your changes. And now, whoops, can we go back? Hello? Oh dear. There it goes. You can see that the active hours have changed to 7 a.m. to 11 p.m. The other thing you want to do is under advanced options, make sure you get updates for other Microsoft products. And the reason you want to do that is if you have Office installed, you will certainly want to get updates for Office as you go. And I have no idea why this is taking so long. Maybe it's upset that I'm not on the internet. Now, if you have Windows 10 Pro, there will be one more thing you can do under advanced options. Down here, there will be a thing saying defer updates. Not pause, but defer. And you can choose how long you want to defer either feature updates, security updates, or both. Now, I strongly recommend not deferring security updates. But feature updates, which is when they change the whole operating system out from under you, is probably not something you want to have happen every 6 months. So you can choose a delay saying, I don't want to see any feature updates for up to a year. It's one of the reasons to have Pro if you can get it. Excuse me. So we've actually made it to the end of settings for now. And then if you have Windows 10 Pro, you can run the group policy editor, and you can disable the lock screen if you would like it to go away and never reappear. Now we come into an area that most people don't really want to do. That's registry hacking. The registry is where Microsoft stores all the key settings for Windows. And editing it is quite dangerous. On the other hand, some things, annoyances, like for example, this mysterious thing called 3D objects, which appeared and none of us are ever going to use. To get rid of it, the only way to do it is to edit the registry. But I've automated that. So in my folder that you have the link to, there's something that says Remove 3D Objects folder. You double click on it. It runs the registry editor. It gives you a couple of warnings. Now, when we reopen, no more 3D objects. It's magic. I've given the actual instructions of what that tool does. Don't try it. You know, it's one of those things, don't try this at home, kids. Call me if it doesn't work. Now, we've installed all the freeware. There's a bunch of tweaks you have to do to freeware, too, to make sure it doesn't spy on you. Now, for Chrome or Firefox, you probably want to put a start page of your choice where you want to have downloads stored if you don't like the download folder. And you should install an ad blocker. The only security measure I'm going to advocate for you today is put an ad blocker in your browser of choice. Now, I use something called uBlock Origin, which is available for Firefox and for Chrome. If you like something else, use it. But get an ad blocker. Ads are the single largest source of malware infections on PCs.
Say the name of the ad blocker again, what you use.
uBlock, with a U, Origin. Now, the next tool we're going to need is called CCleaner, crap cleaner, if you remember. But CCleaner, which used to be free, is unfortunately now owned by a company which would like to make some money from it. So there's a bunch of things you have to do to defang it before it's really good to use. And I think I listed those earlier. I thought I did. Did I miss that?
Number 10.
Number 10. Ah, there it is. Yes, we're on 10. My bad. I thought we were further down. So you go to Options, and you start with Settings, and you want to use the Custom Cleaner because there's things you may want to preserve. Under Cookies, they have now said cookies to keep, including all of their cookies. I don't want any of their cookies. Goodbye. Under Smart Cleaning, they have now added themselves to the startup list. I don't want them to do that, so uncheck the boxes. It'll complain. Let it complain. And then under Updates, no, I don't want it bothering me with updates. And lastly, under Privacy, no, I'm not going to send you anonymous usage data. I'm not going to send you anything. Now, you'll notice that the security icon has a exclamation point, meaning there's something wrong. What's wrong? The answer is I didn't set up a Microsoft account and it's annoyed. So just dismiss the warnings until this thing is clean. Windows 10 comes with a built-in antivirus program. So you don't have to install another one if you don't want to. If you're a Comcast customer, you get Norton Security for free, 5 copies. So you can always put Norton Security on if you get your internet from Comcast. Now, at this point, you would probably run Windows Update. I've already done that. And now we're ready to run CCleaner for real. And what we want is the tools and the uninstaller. Because the uninstaller for CCleaner will let me take things out that Microsoft will not. Like the 3D viewer. Goodbye. Probably want an alarm program, alarm and clock. Calculator, sure. Camera. This lets you take photographs with your webcam. I mean, yeah, you're going to lift your laptop up and... Yeah, I don't think so. So, goodbye. No, I'm not going to play Candy Crush Friends, thank you. I'm not going to play Farm Hero Saga.
If you change your mind or you make a mistake and you go back and add these things.
Yeah, there is a way. You can. I've never had to. The game bar is, again, part of Xbox. Groove Music is their music player, which will sling ads at you. I don't want that. Mail and Calendar is their mail program, which will try and direct you to Outlook.com. I don't want that. Their Maps program, I've never even looked at. I use Google Maps. Thank you. Messaging is their private instant messenger program. It's not secure. Microsoft Pay, I have no idea, but it's probably their way of trying to give you a credit card. I don't want that. The Microsoft Solitaire Collection. Do you play Solitaire on Windows 7? It's gone. And there's the Microsoft Solitaire Collection, which will direct you to the Microsoft Store and ask for money. In my toolkit are the original games for Windows 7, which you can install, and you can not pay a penny for them. So let's get rid of that. Sticky notes. This permits you to put the equivalent of Post-it notes on your screen and write things in them so that you have reminders. You might want it, you might not. I don't. Mixed reality portal. This reality is bad enough, I don't need a mixed one. Mobile plans, I don't need their mobile plans, I have one. Movies and TV is their media player, I don't like it. Now comes a tricky one, Office. You say, Windows comes with Office? No. What it comes with is a teaser to get you to sign up for Office 365, which is their subscription-based online version of Office. So if you have Office on your machine already, you don't need this version. If you want to sign up for Office 365, you can. It means $70 or $80 a year to Microsoft.
For one user, it's $99 for 6.
Okay, that's good. Is that for home use?
Yeah.
Oh, great. Personally, I use LibreOffice, which is free. I like free. So, goodbye. OneNote was a terrible idea in Office, and I don't know why they made it into an app. I'm not doing 3D painting. I'm not going to use their contact application. I'm not going to use their photo viewer because it throws ads. I'm not going to use Print 3D because I don't have a 3D printer. Skype, maybe I'll use. Skype is so you can talk to your grandchildren through the computer. Make sure they show you how to use it. Snip and Sketch, I never had much use for it, but it turns out it's a tool that if you ever need Microsoft support, they will use. So I would leave it. Tips, I don't want to hear their tips. Voice recorder, don't want their voice recorder. They have a little app that will show you the weather. So will your smartphone. So I don't need that.
Is this actually uninstalling these?
Yes, it is really uninstalling them. And then all the things that go with the Xbox go away. So it's been about 20 items. This is what I mean by bloatware. Whoops. And the system will be a lot cleaner when I'm finished. And I am now finished. What does your phone do? I have no idea. But it used to work with Windows phones. Anybody ever have a Windows phone? You can't buy them anymore. Okay,
Does the paid version have all this extra bloatware
paid version.
of CCleaner?
This wasn't part of CCleaner. This was all part of Windows 10 that I was taking out. These are all Windows 10 apps. This is Windows 10 bloatware.
Yeah, but you're doing it in CCleaner to delete it all.
Right, because Microsoft won't let me delete some of these things.
Did you need to save the text file at the bottom?
Nope, didn't need to save anything. I have muscle memory for this. I've done this about 50 times now. If you bring me your machine, it will take me less than an hour to do this whole procedure. Yes?
Yeah, does deleting all these make the machine faster?
Yes, and I'll show you why. So now let's return to settings and deal with the last two things we didn't really deal with. One is setting up my default applications. That is, what by default handles everything. So Thunderbird is my default email because that's what I would use, but you choose your browser or something else. For a music player, that freeware application I installed called MPC Home Cinema will play any type of music, and it's really good about it. For photos, that freeware one I put in called Irfan View will show you any photograph and let you edit it. It's got a very small, very easy to use editor. For your video player, MPC-HC again. And then finally, browser. Choose a browser other than Edge and Internet Explorer. If it's Chrome that you like, choose Chrome. If it's Firefox, use Firefox. So now we have removed all of Windows' built-in stuff from handling our data, with one exception. And that, of all things, is Adobe Acrobat documents, PDFs. So even though we installed Acrobat, the default for handling PDFs remains the Microsoft Edge browser. This is another example of what I consider to be bad behavior on Microsoft's part. They shouldn't steal default file associations. And to fix it's a pain. The procedure is outlined, but you have to find a PDF file. Any PDF file will do. And I happen to know that there's one in the Adobe Reader itself, right there. And then you have to right-click on it and say Properties. And notice that it says it opens with Microsoft Edge. So we'll hit Change, and now it will let me select Adobe Reader, and we fixed it for every PDF on the machine. Yay!
What step are you on, please?
That was 17. And now comes the last really long step, and that is securing your privacy. We have to go back to Settings. We have to go to Privacy. And you'll notice there's there's 24 items in the left column. So to start, I don't want any suggestions. Speech. I don't want this machine listening to me. Maybe you do, but I don't. I don't want it trying to get to know me based on how I type. We've already cut it down to basic in the initial screen. If you failed to do that when you installed, you should now click the radio button for basic rather than full. Activity history. This is wonderful. Even if you declined it during installation, you actually have to turn it off here to keep them from keeping track of everything you do on this machine in the so-called timeline.
So when you do updates, does it sometimes change some of these choices?
It does.
I
This-
noticed that.
This is from the very latest build called 1909. I don't want an activity history, and I want you to clear it. So goodbye. Now let's come down to permissions for applications. Location. I left location services on, but you'll notice that nobody is using it. So that's okay. Camera. So this is if you have a camera, if you have a laptop with a webcam built in. If you don't have a camera, just turn this all off. I don't want any application trying to use this webcam, ever. So I'm just going to turn it off. Same with the microphone. I don't want any application listening to me. That has turned off voice activation. Notifications. You'll notice there are these little notifications that come up. I don't want the applications being able to access that. I don't want it to use my calendar. Not that I have one. I don't want it to make phone calls on my behalf. I don't want it to keep track of my call history. I don't want it accessing my email. I don't want it having a task list. I don't want it to be sending instant messages or SMS. I don't want it to be using Bluetooth. I don't want it to be using anything else. Are you beginning to see a pattern here? But here's one that's really quite serious. When you talked about, does it slow your machine down? Windows 10 will run applications in the background, even if you think you've closed them. This is a hangover from Windows 8, and it means that applications can be consuming memory, burning computer cycles, using your battery, when you think they're not. So if you're going to use the alarms and clocks, well, obviously they have to run in the background so that at 7 o'clock they can wake you up. But there's no reason for the calculator to be on, or Connect, or the Feedback Hub, or the Help application, or Edge. Turn them all off, except for security and settings. Those are the only two to leave on. Automatic file downloads, that's actually not allowed. Documents. Look at all these people who are allowed to grovel through your documents. No, thank you. Windows security, yes. Antivirus should be able to do it. Pictures. Look at all these apps that can grovel through your pictures. Don't want any of them doing it. Videos. Nobody. Thank you very much. So we've gone through and fundamentally disabled the ability of Microsoft's built-in applications to access our data. That was a lot of steps. I think that went up to T. But it doesn't take that long, because basically you're going to say no to everything. Now, some things may break. For example, if you go to use Skype, you'll find that by turning off your microphone and your webcam, Skype doesn't work anymore. You'll have to turn the webcam and the microphone back on, but only for Skype. But for me, I'd rather sort of have my applications asking for permission rather than begging for forgiveness. You know, if you know what I mean. We're almost at the end. Windows security is still complaining about something, but actually it isn't. There's no warnings. It's just, okay. Start menu. You'll notice it's a lot cleaner now. There's a lot fewer items listed. But we still have all these funny tiles. What did they do? Well, I certainly never want to see Edge again, so I'm going to unpin that. This is that peculiar version of Office. I don't want that. This is Microsoft to-do lists, tasks, and reminders. I think instead of just unpinning it, I'm going to uninstall it. I don't want the store. I don't want Microsoft News. I don't want Netflix. Maybe you do. And lastly, I don't want any of these games. Well, look, now I've got nothing. So Now you can pin a few things there that you like. And to pin an application, just right-click on its icon and say, Pin to Start. So the File Explorer and my browser, and my email program. And lo and behold, I have the things I want. Now there's a few other things I will typically put on here for my own use, and they're down here in Windows System. For example, I'll bring back an icon to the control panel so I can find it. And sometimes I use the DOS prompt because I'm a Neanderthal. And lastly, I have this CD program, so I'll pin that to start too. And now I've got a very simple, clean start menu that I understand and which is actually the things I'm going to use. But maybe this is not good enough yet. Maybe you yearn for your old Windows 7 start menu. Well, have I got a deal for you? A lot of people were really, really ticked off when the start menu went away in Windows 8. So they created a program called Classic Shell. And it brought back the Windows 7 start menu. And then when Windows 10 came out, they just said, well, we'll do that. And it's now become an open source program. It's something that a group of people maintain on a volunteer basis. And we'll fire it up. And it will install it. And we don't really want a lot of things. I don't need the classic Explorer look. I don't need a classic Internet Explorer because I'll never use Internet Explorer again. And I will install it. Yes, let it go. Pretty quick. And there it is. Now there were a couple of steps to get here. I had to put this picture in place of what it would have, and I had to select this particular skin, as it's called. But pretty much this is Windows 7 as you knew and loved it. And it works just like the Windows 7 start menu in terms of being able to pin things to it and manipulate it. So you can have Windows 7 too. It's that easy. So now this machine is pretty much done. And as I promised you, it didn't take much more than about an hour. It's time to save your work. And for that, you need an external hard drive. And perhaps you've seen them, these little portable hard drives. They have a USB cord. You plug them in. And they look like a normal disk drive. They work like a normal disk drive. Now, as it happens, I don't have one of those. I have a 128 gigabyte USB stick. Okay, so I'll plug that in. Let it be recognized. Currently, it's got a Windows 10 install image on it. Yeah, who needs that? So to save your work in a way that you can get back to exactly this point, your hard drive dies, some horrible thing goes wrong with Windows 10 and it won't boot anymore. You create what's called a system image. And you remember I said we would need the control panel. And what we need in the control panel is something that has the bizarre name, Backup and Restore Windows 7. It's like, really? We're going to restore or back up Windows 7? No. What they're telling you is this is the way things worked under Windows 7. And of course, they have a better way, which doesn't work anywhere near as well. And what you're going to do is create a system image. The system image is going to have everything that's on this machine on the main drive, plus all the little hidden pieces of information that Microsoft uses to boot. This drive is not a valid backup location.
Yeah, I got that before.
Oh, I know why. Okay. I think I know why. Let's try something different.
Is it because it's bootable?
Yeah. So I'm going to erase it. Let me see if I can erase it. It's going to format the drive. Change its name to protect the innocent. Yeah. That's why this is a demonstration, because, you know, things are happening that I couldn't predict it. I forgot to bring the USB hard drive, so I had to try and use this. Let's try again. Back up and restore Windows 7. See if it's happy this time. No, not a valid backup location. Why are you not a valid backup location? Ah ha ha ha. I know why. Okay, it's because it has a hidden partition on it that Windows uses to boot. As you said, it's because it's a bootable thing. And formatting it did not, in fact, erase that hidden partition. I could erase it, I could show you, but I don't think it's worth it, frankly, because it would really confuse you. So I'm afraid we won't do this piece of the demo. But if you were, somebody said they were having this problem.
Yeah, me.
Okay. The other reason it can go wrong is that it may be formatted as a.
I reformatted it to the NFS, whatever it was.
But the problem may be that it's got what's called a GPT table on it. If it has a GPT table, it won't work. So come see me. We'll fix it. You'd say create a system image. It would look for the disk. You'd say go ahead, and it would save everything. At the end of that, it will ask you whether you want to create a system repair disk. If you've got an optical drive, that's fine. Put a blank CD in there, a writable CD, and let it create the system repair disk, and you're done. But if you have a modern machine that has only USB ports, what do you do now? Yeah. The answer is there's always a way under Windows 10, and you need a different part of the control panel called recovery. And you go and you say create a recovery drive. And this creates a recovery drive on a USB stick that is unique to your machine. Whereas a repair disk can be used on any Windows 10 machine with a CD drive. The recovery drive that's created by this procedure is unique to your computer. So you've got to have a fairly big USB stick, like 16 gigabytes, and it has to be USB 3 if, it doesn't have to be, but it should be, so it's fast enough. And it will back up everything that Windows needs to boot or repair your system. So it's a two-step procedure. One is to save all your data, and then either create an optical a CD that you can boot in an emergency, or to create a thumb drive that you can boot in an emergency. Either way. Yes, my privacy settings blocked access to the microphone. That's what I wanted. I don't know why you think I shouldn't. Okay. So that's the end of our story. I realize it was a really, really fast run through. And you may be wondering, do I have to do all 22 steps and 500 sub-steps? The answer is no. It depends on what you're comfortable with. I'm very much a person who values my privacy and security. I didn't want Microsoft or anybody else taking my data or looking at my usage patterns. So I shut off quite a few things that were built in. The benefit is I don't get ads. I don't get my actions tracked. And the machine is much cleaner and simpler. There's many fewer doodads In the start menu, many fewer things that I might touch by accident that could cause things to go wrong. But if you find this too intimidating, you'll be okay. You just won't have the machine quite as simple. Thank you.